And appreciate those of you who are up and at 'em early on this Tuesday morning on Birds 365. You got your Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. To our buddy MNO Bogosian, who's getting on our case before the show even starts. Birds 365 needs to take their name more literally. I've been waiting 3 days since the L. Well, number one, no, we didn't schedule the game on Saturday. The NFL did, so don't blame us for that. And yes, as a group, as a company, as a gathering, we took a holiday yesterday. Sorry, we're humans, just like you, I'm sure.
Yeah, we didn't.
Not been working 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Everybody needs a little downtime, and we all need a little downtime after what happened on
We
Saturday.
didn't schedule Christmas Day when Christmas Day was either. So, yeah, the holiday was Monday. By the way, Birds 365 refers to the YouTube channel. All the interviews are clipped, so you can watch Eagles stuff 24/7, 365. So,
right.
Yeah, but occasionally, obviously, we don't work on weekends, and every once in a while, we get a holiday like everybody else.
We're not live 365, but we are available 365 because, as Johnny correctly points out, it's there for you anytime you want to go back and watch it. But you want new, live, updated info, and we've got that for you for the next 2 hours here on Birds 365. Updated info, now the pain is sunk in. It started to subside. The Eagles came up short against the Cowboys down in Dallas. Johnny and I are going to break it down for you the next couple hours. But if you're looking for surprise out of either one of us, you're not going to get it because both John and I picked the Cowboys to win this game. It's not the end of the world.
No, I don't even care about the game now that Lane Johnson and Avonte Maddox are hurt. That's the bigger concern for me. The game is like, all right. We go back to the schedule, Jody. Remember when the schedule was released, we talked about this spot. I thought it was going to be difficult from day one. I look at it, if you want to play glass is half full, a lot of people say depending on who you like, who you dislike, I'm either negative or optimistic. In this case, I'm going to be optimistic because what I saw as a backup quarterback who hasn't played in a year throw for 355 yards. There was some rust, no question about it, but they turned it over 4 times. This team is 13-0, Jody, when they don't turn it over 4 times. I mean, there's a solid correlation there. When they take care of the football, they win. When they don't, they lose. And they didn't take care of the football. And you know what? I don't blame Gardner for that because I think Quez Watkins should have fought for the ball a little bit harder on both of those interceptions. Now, they weren't great throws. I'm not going to say they were great throws. But you got to fight for the ball. You got to help your quarterback. And I think a different receiver would have done that and at least gotten incompletions there. Then you had the mesh point fumble. And that's always given to the quarterback statistically, but that was Boston's fault. And then you have the fumble by Miles Sanders. Uncharacteristic. The Eagles almost went wire to wire, Jody, leading the NFL in turnover ratio. All of a sudden in one game, it flipped. The Eagles came in plus 12. The Cowboys came in plus 9 in second. Now the Cowboys are plus 12 and the Eagles are plus 9. That explains the whole game.
Understood. You're being a little bit more lenient to the quarterback position than I would be. Quez Watkins had the ball pulled away from him, and that's on Quez. Both of those passes were not good. And the quarterback makes the decision of where to pass the ball. And if you make the decision that you're going to throw a slant, middle of the field, ball to Quez Watkins, I know he's the backup, but he's there every single day. He watches film. He breaks it down with everybody else. He knows slant passes, be thinking A.J. Brown. Over the middle, be thinking Dallas Goedert. And or Devonta Smith, who certainly is better than Quez Watkins, even though neither one of them are going to win a Mr. Olympic contest. He chose to throw it there, and the ball got picked off, and Quez certainly contributed in lack of toughness, but he's the one who decides where to throw the football.
Yeah. And I think both of us mentioned last week leading up to the game. I'm not saying they were good throws. I said that originally. I'm saying, a lot of times when you have backup quarterback, the hope is the rest of the team sort of raises their level to make up for the backup versus the starter. Well, you got to raise your level. You are playing with a backup. There is a little bit of a rust. You got to fight for that football. I'm sorry. If I look, and that, one guy's a starter and one guy's not, you got to fight for that football, Watkins. This, it reminded me of that, Cousins Rager incident that we talked about on the show, where I'm like, Kirk's got to learn. Kirk's a veteran quarterback. If that guy's not going to fight for you, don't throw him the football. Hopefully Gardner learned that this week, because Kirk learned it real quick with Jalen Rager. If you're not going to fight for the football, Quez, well, guess what? Don't complain about lack of targets.
Right. And I know he's got to run the routes. It's too simplistic. Say, well, just tell Quez to go on the fly every single snap. No, because then everybody on the planet knows that you're going to be running the fly in every snap. So he's got to run routes across the field from time to time. Don't mean you have to throw him the ball. You put it in there to keep the defense honest. When you chose to throw it to him twice over the middle, you're taking a risk, and they paid the price.
Hopefully he learns from it. If he has to continue playing, which is going to be an interesting discussion this week for a number of reasons.
It will be the number one discussion this week because, Eagles lost. They didn't clinch the NFC East. They didn't clinch the number one record. They still only have to win one of two games. Their margin of error was this wide. Now it's down to about this. The number one conversation will be Jalen Hurts and his health. And I was on WIP last night, and I'm heard, is he going to play? Shouldn't play him. They should play him. Jalen Hurts has to be back. They should still keep him in bubble wrap. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody knows exactly what the Eagles should do, who should be the Eagles starting quarterback come Sunday against the Saints. What's going to determine that, John?
The doctors, Twitter doctors, go, who you should play. You should play. I don't have the information on, I did a lot of research on SC joint issues, which are a little bit more complicated than a sprained shoulder in the AC joint, which is the more common one. So, and then there's grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. From the way the Eagles have talked, it sounds to me like a grade 2, so right in the middle. Grade 1 would probably be a little bit easier to project him back on the field. But the biggest concern to me, and I went to the Stedman Clinic, which is pretty famous. People probably remember it. A number of high-profile surgeries in Denver over the years. You are susceptible for further injury, grade 2 or above. So I think that kind of determines the fate. If he's susceptible to further injury, well, you can't play him until you get that rest and rehab. And that would be probably January 21st or January 22nd, the first playoff game, if the Eagles don't implode. But you know what complicates things? If there's even a little bit of gray area, no Lane Johnson. All of a sudden, are you going to put a 50-50 quarterback? The offensive line's still great. Jack Driscoll's a great backup. Who knows? They might move Jordan Mailata over, put Andre Dillard in, blah, blah, blah. Good backup. Ain't Lane Johnson, who hasn't given up a sack in 960 snaps, whatever he's up to. It ain't Lane Johnson. And you're going to put that danger added to the mix. That's why I think it's even more interesting than originally was going to be. Now that Lane's not going to be there.
Right. Then you just called Jack Driscoll a great backup. And people were calling Gardner Minshew a great backup last week. Guess what? There was a drop-off. And this week, excuse me?
There's a huge drop-off, but they are great backups. But they're good backups. But they're backups. They're not all pros. Yeah. That's the difference. one Lane Johnson's an all-pro. Jalen Hurts is playing like an all-pro. They have very good backups, but there's a huge drop-off from all pros to very good backups. I mean, those two things are not mutually exclusive.
That reminds me of 35 years ago when a friend of mine was setting me up on a blind date and said, she's got a great personality. That's not a good sign when you hear that. And so he's a great backup. There's a reason that they're backups, because they're not good enough to start, plain and simple. And yeah, you're putting Jalen Hurts at that much more risk if Jack Driscoll's going to be out there. Do you believe it will be Jack Driscoll, or do you think the Eagles will go the flip-flop route to replace Lane Johnson for a minimum the next 2 weeks?
I think it will be Jack Driscoll unless the belief is that Lane isn't going to be able to play moving forward. And, right off the bat, and I will tell you, just yelling at Twitter doctors, this is pure speculation. So I don't want anybody to take the baton here. But if you remember, Lane had an abdominal issue during the Giants game, I believe it was. And then everything runs together. But I'm pretty sure it was the Giants game because I remember talking to him in the locker room. He had to leave that game. And they said, yeah, well, he's day-to-day. He's not that serious. And then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, he hurts the abdomen again. It was described as a torn tendon, which is kind of weird, kind of a weird description. So I don't know what's going on, but I'm fearful of the dreaded sports hernia, that's a kind of injury that certain guys have tried to fight through. And my belief is Lane's one of the toughest guys on this team. He'll try to fight through it. He'll try to show up for the playoffs. But those guys are not the same. That's my fear. But I think he's going to try to play. I think they would only consider moving Jordan if they didn't think Lane was going to come back. In other words, if they assess that he's done for the year, I think that's on the table. If it's only going to be the final 2 games, I think it's Jack Driscoll, right tackle. So it's kind of, weighing where they are. And I asked Nick Sirianni about moving parts because coaches tend to hate moving parts yesterday. And I got the dreaded good question, which means he's trying to think of an answer without giving something away. And he went down, a circuitous route, shall we say. Depends on the player position, blah, blah, blah. So my short answer would be if he's done for the season, I think they would consider moving parts. They think he's coming back, and I think he's coming back. I don't know how effective he's going to be. Then I think they just go with Jack.
My short answer is I'm in agreement with you for 1 game. I think that Jack Driscoll is your starting right tackle this week. See how it goes. If you win, then of course you got the luxury of doing whatever the hell you want for the last regular season game. But if they lose, even if they believe Lane Johnson is coming back, if he plays poorly enough, break down the film, he doesn't hold up his end of the bargain, I think they'll flop for the next game against the Giants because it becomes a must-win game. So I think it depends on a couple different things. Number one, the outcome of that game, and number 2, the way that he plays. I don't think they make a in-stone decision. Well, we know Lane will be back in 2 weeks, so Jackson's going to hold down the fort. We're staying with him for the next 2 games. I think it's a game-by-game decision leading into the playoffs. And yes, then of course you got to factor in your.
Well, I do admit I'm assuming a win against the Saints because the Saints are god awful. They have a
Saints
god awful
defense
coach.
Is not god awful.
They have a bad coach. They don't make the right decision at quarterback week after week.
Quarterbacks don't play defense.
I am assuming a win over the Saints, and I think they will. So it would be interesting if they don't win that game because, then I think panic sets in because you just lost to a really bad football team. Yeah. But even if Gardner plays like he played against the Cowboys, they're beating the Saints. And who knows? Maybe Jalen's healthy. Maybe it's grade 1 injury. Maybe it's not grade 2. And he's able to make it back. And then I think it's an easy win, even without Lane Johnson. But yeah, I mean, panic is going to set in if they somehow lose that game, Jody. No question. And remember, Dallas also has to win, and Minnesota also has to win. So that factors into it as well. Now, Dallas, I believe, plays on Thursday night. So this could all be moot if they lose. Minnesota, I think, plays later. So they play after the Eagles, I believe. But they play in Green Bay, and Green Bay's playing well. And, dome team. I don't know what the weather's going to be, but I think Green Bay's going to make it their annual miracle run to the play. Not annual, but every once in a while they have a bad year and win 5 or 6 in a row to make the playoffs. I think that's going to happen. So ultimately, I think none of this is going to matter. But there's certainly going to be, if the Cowboys win and the Eagles lose, there's going to be some panic setting in, shall we say.
And I would not say that panic was unjustified if you drop back-to-back games. They're better than the Saints. They're already a 6-point favorite over the Saints, even with Jalen Hurts. Last week, we know the line moved unbelievably when words started to emanate out, not to media outlets, to gambling outlets, and the point spread jumped by 5 points. This one is already established.
Howie's probably checking phones at the Novicar complex. Yeah.
Don't know who he's checking with, but they've already established the fact that with Gardner Minshew, the Eagles are a 6-point favorite. So they're supposed to win the game. If they don't, then yes, I think there is reason for people to start to get nervous here in Philadelphia. All right, Johnny Mac with Johnny Mac, the Mac guys here on Birds 365. We got 2 of our stalwarts joining us today. Coming up within the next couple of minutes, longtime Eagle beat writer Les Bowen is going to jump in and give us his thoughts on where the Birds are at after the loss against the Cowboys. And then in hour number 2, Chris Franklin jumps in, usually first show after an Eagle loss. I know. To MNZQRST, I forget what his name was, who said, literally, you guys are supposed to be there 365 days. Haven't been able to find out what you think about the loss. Well, you're going to get it over the next hour and 40 minutes. He is John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Hopefully, Les Bowen when we return.